Protection of Our People by Kelly Livingston. What would you do? You are home sleeping and hear a disturbing noise from downstairs. Someone has broken in. You are no longer allowed to have your pistol because the government removed your right to bear arms. What would you do to protect your family? You are out shopping with your family and you hear a gun being fired further down in the mall. You reach for your handgun, which you used to be able to carry with your permit, but the government doesn't allow it anymore. What would you do to help save your family and others? A major controversy in the United States at this point in time is an issue with whether or not gun control laws need to be changed or not. The Second Amendment of the United States Constitution reads, "A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed." This is stating that the people or citizens of the United States are able to have their own guns in the case of any outside threats coming into the United States, or also if there were to be any threats from within the United States itself, such as a tyrannical government. The history of gun control goes back many years, and the first gun control laws were actually introduced during slavery to prevent slaves from obtaining firearms to be able to kill their owners. Next, gun control became an issue in the 1920s when gangsters had machine guns and also Tommy guns and were killing innocent people in their own fights and also committing mass murders. Present day gun control issues have come about because of this Columbine shooting, the Colorado shooting, and most recently the Sandy Hook massacre. Gun availability to the public. It's a big issue as to which guns should be allowed to be owned by American citizens. Most recently, with the Sandy Hook shooting, an AR-15 gun was used, and many people believe that it's not a gun that should be allowed to American citizens. They want to know if there should actually be a restriction on the amount of rounds or the amount of ammunition. Another issue is also should the American citizens be punished because of what several people have done. It wasn't the guns that committed these crimes. It was actually the shooters who had pulled the trigger. The guns did not fire on their own. The people who had done the shooting, they were the ones who had done this. It just goes along the same lines as should cars be removed from American citizens because there are people out there who have done drunk driving and have killed people or just done hit and runs. Should we not have vehicles anymore, just like we shouldn't have guns anymore? There's also a risk of a tyrannical government. This has actually happened in history before as well. Guns were removed in Germany after World War One. The government had removed them in order to keep the amount of guns down. There had actually been towns who they were only 9 people were permitted to have guns because they had been deemed good citizens, but yet this is a town of 10,000 people and they needed these guns in order to survive and provide for their families. Also with this, it allowed Hitler easy access to taking over because he had documentation from the dealers of who had these guns. So he was able to go and take them right away. It wasn't a very hard thing for him to do. Um, this is why the right of to bear arms was in place for the American citizens to avoid these threats from inside and outside of our country. It's also a big thing that the government is trying to take guns from the good guys. What would we do if there have been citizens out there who weren't carrying guns who have been able to prevent such things from happening? Guns have been removed from the law-abiding citizens, but they're still owned by criminals because they don't go by the laws, unfortunately. They're going to own their guns whether the government says so or not, and they will have access to those through the black market and their own trading and such. Criminals are going to be unstoppable to the citizens, and we're not going to have anything to protect ourselves if we don't have those good people out there who do carry their guns and are able to stop some of these shooters. There's a requirement right now for background checks for sale of guns through dealerships, but it's not put in place right now for private gun sales, which would actually help to eliminate some of this. If people who were selling their guns privately just went down and had to pay a $30 fee between the seller and the purchaser to be able to transfer the gun with a background check, this could also help cut down on that elimination of sale of guns to criminals because they're not getting these guns for nothing without having any sort of check through private sales. Another reason why guns shouldn't be taken away from American citizens is because of the fact that these shooters have been deemed and noted to have psychological disorders. Adam Lanza, who was the Sandy Hook shooter, was noted to have a personality disorder and was also in critical need of psychiatric treatment. The shooter from Colorado in the movie theater, James Holmes, he had attempted to plead insanity at his trial due to a previous known mental issue that was not disclosed due to private reasons because of different privacy laws and letting out the information of mental health issues without permission. Another known shooter who has had mental issues is Jared Lohner, the shooter of U.S. Representative Gabriel Gifford. He had displayed signs of social psychopathology and psychiatric illness before the shooting occurred. Um, Basically, with the social psychopathology, he was considered to be a psychopath. It's not a matter of changing the laws and taking away the guns and the rights of the citizens. It's a matter of needing stricter checks to make sure that these guns are not getting into these hands of these criminals and also of these people who have these mental issues, unfortunately. Um, when guns are purchased with the private sales, as I've already said, it needs to have background checks for any type of sale, whether it's private or through a dealer. Um, all sales should be handled through these certified dealers. There's a reason why they have these licenses, and they should be used in all aspects. Also, another idea to add on to the background checks is also to set up a red flag when there has been mental health issues with someone. Not necessarily stating what it is because of privacy issues, but to put up a little red flag saying this person has had something happen and they may not need treatment anymore and may be better, but to have something, just a letter from their doctor stating that they are considered responsible and stable enough without having any concerns or issues with a possibility of having a mental breakdown. As I've noted before, there also have been many of good citizens out there who have their carrying permits and have actually helped stop bad guys with the guns. If we remove these rights from these people, who's going to stop them? Um, it was stated by Wayne LaPierre right after the Sandy Hook massacre. He's the executive vice president of the National Rifle Association of America, also known as the NRA, that the only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. Unfortunately, the police forces are not big enough and cannot respond fast enough in some situations that if there is someone there carrying a gun who has a permit and who can possibly reduce the fatalities or stop the shooter altogether, that would not be a bad thing. One example is Travis Dean Neal. He was able to provide backup for a police officer in a shootout with three dangerous criminals because backup could not get to this officer in time, and he would have been shot and killed himself. There were also three law students in Virginia who had stopped a potential shooter from a mass shooting because they felt confident enough with the one student carrying a gun to be able to tackle the shooter. They felt that they were comfortable with this, knowing this person had a gun and had something that could make it to the shooter if he were to try shooting at them. This has been a big concern in America, and I really think that gun laws do not need to be changed. The Second Amendment does not need to be taken away from the citizens, but more protection along the lines of making sure that we're keeping these guns away from these people who are not stable enough to handle them or who don't care, such as the criminals. I think this is more of what we need to do and not take away the hopes and the protection that we do have in the, like I said, in the case of not having the police there. Thank you.